I'd like to welcome you all to the APCUG Wednesday workshop focusing on learning Linux. This is a service of APCUG to their member groups and the members of those groups as a benefit. We hold these workshops on most Wednesdays, variety of topics. Today, as I said, we're doing Linux. Next week, we will be back at 12 o'clock noon start time with a workshop on drones. Next month, we will be having a workshop that is really going to be our VTC on the second week of February. So there won't be a Wednesday workshop because we're all getting ready for the Saturday VTC. We're hoping to have another Linux workshop in the third week of February. Gotta get my new months. And the fourth week is our Windows one, isn't it?
It's Wi-Fi, routers, and modems. What's new?
Good. And then in March, we've already got one planned for Macs. I'm sorry, we got our first Mac workshop. And we will be doing a workshop on backup. And so we might hear some more of that from Judy at the end before we close on that. So without further ado, I'm going to start sharing my screen over here. And then switch. Clean up some stuff here, get that out of the way. Oh, I went the wrong way. It's a good thing that Judy can. There we go. This is our fifth workshop for Learning Linux, and I plan to start off by saying that I am not a Linux expert. I want that to be right out in front. I'm a Linux enthusiast, which means that I really like Linux. I'm a teacher with my background, so I like to share information. So I like to share what I know with others. As you may remember, if you were with us before, and for those new to this series, Linux is a free operating system, and therefore there's not a lot of money that comes in for use in advertising. Most of it is done in free. People have an interest. So therefore you don't get a lot of advertising, TV, as you would with the other two major operating systems. And the way it works is by word of mouth, we spread the word on Linux. So that's what my goal is. As a teacher, I always knew that I was always smarter, one step ahead of students. And so my goal is to share with you what I've learned, what I like. And then when we have questions that are more difficult, then we call in experts. As we have been with before, we have two other co-presenters for our Linux workshops. Neither of them were able to be free today. So I'll leave some of the real techno stuff for them in the future. And today I'm going to be able to share with you some other information that I think is very beneficial for Linux. This is going to be a two-part session today. And the first part, we're going to be talking about what I call software siblings. Got two mouths to work on. We're going to be talking about core components of Linux. And as those who have been here with me before, and I'm just the guy who's willing to get up and speak and organize this. A lot of people won't do a workshop. They don't want to get out. They've got knowledge, but they don't want to do this. But I do it. I'm crazy. And you know that I always talk about a relationship with Linux and cars. And again, today I'm going to do a little bit of talk where core components is just like cars. Hit the wrong button. You have to have the basics. And with cars, you've got to have, things like, the body around you. And you got to have wheels and tires that you can run on the road. Well, you obviously have to have an engine so that it'll move, and seats to sit on. We don't want to have to stand like you might have to stand in a wagon or something. And you got to be able to steering wheel, gear shift, and other things that are minimum requirements for what you need. But what kind of body you have, what kind of tires you have, that's up to somebody else. And as you know, if you've gone out and bought cars, there are lots of different kind of wheels, lots of different kind of tires, different kinds of engines that are installed. And I can remember the years that we've gone from the seats that we've had. In the very beginning, we had a permanent seat. And if you could reach the pedals, good. If you couldn't, sorry about your luck. And then we had seats that moved forward and back. That was great. Then somebody said, well, what about if we can have the seats go up and down? So now we can go forward and back and up and down. And then somebody said, oh, what about making the seat so we can kind of lean back a little bit? And so we ended up with our 6-way seats and everything. So those are something that we don't maybe necessarily have control over, but it's the ones we buy. I can even remember growing up through the standard stick shift, and we finally got the automatic transmission. And I can remember a friend of mine's family, they even had a car that had push buttons for the gears. And I had a little car one time, a little Pontiac Tempest, and it had a little lever that I just raised up and down to change gears. And we've had different kind of shaped steering wheels. So all of this is depending on who is designing something. So that's just like with Linux. Linux has a base core of tools that we need, and being free, and that's the thing for the new people, Linux is all free and it's open source. That means that anybody can see how something is built. I call it the recipe. And then they can modify the recipe with their own ideas, just like you would with a real food recipe, trying to make it a little bit better than somebody else is making the recipe. So there are lots of variations, lots of different opportunities that you can have in the Linux world with what you're doing. Today, we're going to be talking about a number of different components, and you can see them on the screen. We have things that we need, such as start menus, browsers, all sorts of different viewers. And I selected these because these are pretty much the areas that we mostly use in our general everyday computer activities that we do. And so I'm going to focus on those. Now, there are other things included, but I'm not going to talk about them specifically today, these things that I've got on this list. However, in building or working up this presentation, I have found that I could probably have dropped everything off this list except for preferences, settings, and system tools. Because what I've discovered is that most Linux have now said those others are really not as important. If you want some of those things, you can go out and get them. But maybe they're not going to be included in your car. As an example, in the older days, air conditioning wasn't always included. And if you wanted it, you would either have to do it as a special order, or my dad, one time we added an add-on one that was hooked to the underside of the dashboard. Also, my car that I have right now did not come with a spare tire. They gave me a can of stuff that you hook up to your tire and blow it back up to get you to somewhere where you could get it fixed. But the reason for it was that spare tire added weight to your car. Additional weight brought down your gas mileage. So in order to get the gas mileage for the car I have up higher, didn't include it. I could have ordered one at extra cost, but I would have had to sign a form that says, I realize that by including a spare tire, I will not probably get the gas mileage that it stated. So same thing for here. These other things are things that people use, but not as much. Oh, wrong button. Sorry, I'm working from two different screens. For today's presentation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare a number of different versions of desktops. Now, a quick explanation for the people who are new. Windows comes with one desktop and you can move some things around it. But in Linux, being open source, somebody has taken the recipe for putting together a desktop and has made different kinds. Some of them are best for computers that have low processes and resources, and some are, require higher. Some of them are very simple and plain. I don't want to say plain, very simple. Some of them have very extra stuff that goes with it. So I picked 8 of the more popular of the desktop environments, which include the KDE, Gnome, XFC, LXQT, Mate, Cinnamon, Budgie, and Pantheon. And just as a fun thing, I have selected those from 8 different Linux distributions. And again, that's for the new people. That would be like the manufacturer of cars. Same thing. You can take the recipe for Linux and do things to it and come out with a variation. And in the videos that we've done before, we've talked a little bit more about that, and we will talk more in the future. Now, I could have, for this presentation, just stuck with the Debian operating system, because Debian has 6 different versions. 6 of these 8 desktops that I'm talking about today are all included in Debian. And I could have used Ubuntu because, again, it has 6 of these, and Fedora has 5 of them. But I chose to go with a variety of distros so that we could see a little bit of maybe variation in what's going on with everything else. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share with you the different software that comes with these different desktops. It's not so important right now about what distro it came from, but I just selected it. And then we'll take a look at some of those to get an idea of the variations in them. So each area has 2 slides, one with these 4 and then one with the other 4. And with KDE, their novelty is that almost all of their applications that they design, especially for the KDE desktop, are usually K something. And K App Launcher is the one for the KDE. The Gnome one is just Gnome Menu. But the XFC has one called Whiskers, and it's been around for a good long time, and we'll see it. LXQT is one of the newest ones. It was taking a combination of an LXLE and with the QT. And nowadays, a lot of them, Bill James would be happy with this, is that a lot of the programs are now just called what they are. And so LXQT does it with menu. This. Mate has another one of the older menus that is brisk. Cinnamon just calls their menu Cinnamon. And you can see that Budgie and Pantheon, they do the same thing. They're just going to go through and call their menu a menu. As we take a look, so you can see, you know, I'm going to have to do these with separate slides because to start up a different operating system, which I could do through virtual machines, would stretch this workshop into, you know, probably tomorrow or something. KDE has a very traditional menu. I don't like it as well because to me, it's a lot of got to click and then got to click and then you got to click backwards to get around. You can see at the bottom of the menu that they have certain categories, and like right now I'm on the application menu and you can see the categories of applications. Then I would have to click to get to the next one to see the actual programs. Then if I wanted to go back to the applications, I would have to go back one click or click at the bottom. Computer goes to those certain things. Some people, they like this just real well, no problem. It's all a matter of choice, and that is another key word for new people to Linux is choice. And I agree, John made a point. Sometimes there's too many choices. And so for beginners, sometimes we need to direct you and say, you go here and start here, and then you can expand out once you've tried something. One neat thing about the KDE is that they understand that people have different kinds of needs like me, and they allow you to change between 4 different menus. I'm going to do the second one, and it's a more of a traditional one where when you move up to the category, it just pops out and then you can click on what you want. Also, it has some favorites on the side that you can choose what you want there to be able to have quick access. Similar to what you are used to now in Windows 10 with the column on the side. They also have access to recent applications and recent documents. What you'll notice as we go through this menu section is not everybody gives you that. And that's because some people say, I don't want to know what my recent applications or documents were. If this one isn't up to your liking and you want something even more modern, they even have one that looks a little bit like a Windows 8 tablet type menu. And this one's really nice because your favorites are always over there on the side. And then on the right-hand side, you have your categories. The thing with the Windows 8 and tablets, you don't always have access to category. You either have all of your programs in alphabetical order, and then you have to scroll windows and back and forth to get all your programs. So KDE is really nice because it has 3 different ones. So you got to be able to find one. Then there's one that's even simpler than that. If we take a look at the new modern Gnome Desktop, this one starts out with a very plain desktop and only an activity button up in the top left corner. When you click on that, you get your favorite bar, which is on the side, and all that is just the taskbar that has been shrunk to about half the size. Eliminate wasted space. The thing with the Gnome Desktop is that all of their programs are in alphabetical order. When you fill up one screen, you start to create another screen, and so to see all your programs, you have to go back and forth between screens. You can combine some down here where it says utilities, you can group things. I probably would go and group all my LibreOffice icons into one folder to take up, less room. Moving to the Whisker menu, which is a very old one. XFCE is one of the first desktops that was created with Linux. You can see it's a very traditional menu. It's up at the top just because this distro and this desktop choose to put it at the top. I prefer my main screen toolbar or taskbar at the top because with trifocals or no lines, it's easier to see at the top than looking at the bottom. So it just drops down instead of drops up. No personal preference. And you can see that again, it has the categories. And when you click on a category, you see all the programs that go with that. The LXQT, which is kind of the newer one, has one that is a little bit different. It's sort of like the second one where you can go up and you click the category and it pops out. But notice this one doesn't have any favorites. This one says, well, if you want favorites, you can put them on your taskbar on your bottom of your screen and click it from there. But this is a very nice one, LXQT. During the presentation, I have not done anything to the default settings. So that's why some of these have darker backgrounds, some of them have lighter backgrounds. It's depending on the team and what they produced. Mate uses what's called the brisk menu, and very similar to what we saw before, you have the categories on the left, or you can put them on the right, depending on which one works for you. And whereas before, one category always has to be the active one, and then you just go down and pick what you want. You also have a control center and a system tool. Now, the original Gnome Desktop, and this is based off of the Gnome Desktop from way back, used to have three little tabs at the top of the screen, one for programs, one for places, and one for like system and administration. And that way people like that because it kept them apart. It sorted them out so you didn't have to see them all like you do here or on one of the other ones. Cinnamon is the version for the Linux Mint Cinnamon desktop. But again, like I said, many of these desktops are found on many different distros. So you can pick a distro and then pick the version that has the desktop environment that you like the best. This one's very similar to a combination of what we've had before, and it has the shortcuts on the side and categories. If you look at the Budgie one, most of Budgie and the next one with the Enlightenment or the Pantheon desktop are programs that have been modified to be a little bit simpler and easy to use. You can see here again that there's no shortcuts on the menu. It's all going to be on the task bar. And the last one is the Pantheon, and they do a two approach. Down at the bottom is their conky or their little desktop. Again, all that is just a toolbar that shrunk down to make it more compact. Put your favorites on there, and then they do like what Ubuntu does with the GNOME, and their programs are in alphabetical order. A lot of people don't like that because they're going, I don't know what program I need. I need to do this tool, but I don't know what it might be called. This program will also let you, up at the top left corner of the start menu, you have a choice of putting it in alphabetical order like it is right now, or you can click on categories and then have the category menu. One other thing that all of these had was a search box. And if you know what you're looking for, you could just type the name of the program and that will come to the forefront. Or some of these you'd have to play around, are designed that if you type what you want to do, I want to take a screenshot. And as you can see, they have a program called Screenshot, but some of them have a different name. So if I just type, I want to, screenshot, it would pop up. So that gives you an idea of 8 different variations of what does the same thing. All of these programs are menus that show you what programs you have and allow you to get access to them. Next, second most important thing is dealing with your files, organizing your files, accessing your files, saving your files. So we have file managers. Most of these have their own name, but as I said, Gnome and the newer ones are going back to just naming what they do. And that would have been a problem for this workshop, because then everything would have said files, 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 and you wouldn't know what I was talking about in terms of differences. So the KDE has a really good menu, file manager called Dolphin, and Gnome has theirs based on the older file manager called Nautilus, but nowadays they're just calling it Files. XFC uses the very old Thunar. LXQT is using another lightweight one called PCMan FM. The Thunar PCMan FM are the two. I use 2 different file managers because I can't decide between the 2. Mate has a variation of the old Gnome Desktop, and they call theirs Kaja. Cinnamon did the same thing. They said, we're going to make the old Gnome Ubuntu desktop file manager, and they call it Nemo. And most of us probably could catch the different symbolism there, where the original one was called Nautilus and this is Nemo. If you don't know 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Professor Nemo was the one that drove the Nautilus, was the ship. And you can see that Budgie and Pantheon just call their files. And so in my slides, I have to kind of let you know which is which, because they're both called the same name. This is Dolphin. And the key thing about the difference in file managers is looking to see how they organize things. I like Dolphin very much. Dolphin, as the left-hand side shows, that they separate things into categories such as the places, remote networks. They have a place that lets you access recent files or recent locations where you've been. And that's helpful, because if you were working on a file recently and you can't quite remember the name of it, see where you've been recently or see what files you've been working recently. And then they have all the devices that are connected to your computer. Now, this one was taken where it read off of my desktop computer, where I have a number of hard drives and partitions, and Linux reads it all. It also has your main folders. This one just has desktop and downloads and trash, but you can also add to it. Home gets you to see all of your home folders. I like this one a lot because it looks good. It really has a lot of customizing for it. This is the one that is what used to be called Nautilus and Files. You'll notice that in it's all in just one big category. But it has your recent, it has your different primary folders that you can go to, and other locations. That will open it up to your whole computer. You can probably add to this. My personal preference when I look at folders and files is the detailed look. And both Linux and Macs and Windows, you have options whether you want to look at folders or at the actual file names and all the information you can see. So it depends on what you want to see. I prefer to know a lot more information. Some people just want those folders and files and the thumbnails that go with that. Nautilus, it was a good one, now called Files. Depends on whether you like it all in one list or separated. The Thunar that comes with the XFCE, so that's the one that I have on came default on my computer, does the same thing with dividing. Only it's interesting, they put the devices first and then your places second and network last. Well, you know, it might make a difference. If you like your places first, then you'd go with the others. This one's a very easy one to work. It has a lot of customizing that go with it, what you want to see. The other one that I have on my computer is PC Man FM, FM for File Manager. And this one again does the places first and the devices second. So this way you can have the two. If you like the devices first, you can go with Thunar. If you like places first, you can go with PC Man FM. They all basically do the same thing. And you can customize them. You can add folders that maybe subfolders into that list so you don't have to go to the parent folder first. Kaja is the one that Mint uses for, what Mate uses. And basically it's the same thing. Naming different. It's got computer instead of places and then the devices. The beauty is that as we've learned in Linux, is that you can pick and choose. As you heard, XFCE came with my desktop that I'm using because it's the XFCE desktop, but I kind of like the PC Man FM, so I installed it. And it doesn't hurt to have two running because it's going to the same file system on your computer. Kaja had one thing that was really, really kind of nice from the beginning. If you're a person that does a lot with moving files around, Kaja can let you have a second pane, not a second tab. All of these file managers can let you open up second tabs, second windows, but Kaja will let you open up a second pane. And what was really nice is that in its choice for copying, you had a quick way to say, copy it to the other pane. No dragging, no dropping, no cutting, no pasting, just go to the other pane. Evidently, that's not very important anymore in the Linux world because Kaja is about the only one that lets you do that. That's because if you have two tabs, you can drag and drop. You know, my PC Man FM, I can do that. I can drag and drop files between two tabs, and it's not that big, but I kind of like the idea of being able to have that. So if that sounds good to you, you might want the Kaja file manager too. Nemo, and it's interesting because Nemo came from the original Nautilus, and this is their take of it. Pretty much the same, but there might be a few things in it that you like a little bit different. You'd have to kind of really compare the two and investigate. As we did with the Bungie, files is what they call their file, but when you look at it, you can see, oh, okay, it's just a modification of one of those main ones. Places at the top, devices at the bottom. They tell you one thing nice. If you notice on the left-hand side where it says file system, that tells you how full my hard drive is. Kind of nice to have a quick look at that. And I didn't show you the one for elementary because at Pantia, it's the same thing. It's the same, pretty much very same. Web browsing. Lots of choices in web browser, but you'll notice right here a pattern. Just about everybody in Linux, their default browser is going to be Firefox because of its open source background. LXQT does it different. They give you two to start with. One called Otter, which is just a variation of one of the browsers. It could be kind of a variation of Chrome. And as you see here, same thing. The only one that doesn't use Firefox is Pantheon, and it uses an older one called Epiphany. They all do the same thing. We also have one called Chromium that is a good browser built on a different platform than what Firefox is. And that's what Google took, the recipe for Chromium, and built their closed source Chrome browser. And so you can use Chrome browser on your Linux if you want. You can use Chromium, but most distros provide Firefox as the end. So because of that, Firefox, that's nothing exciting. We all use Firefox, or a lot of people use Firefox in both Linux, Macs, and Windows. It's a cross-platform program, so there's no need to look at Firefox. Next up is email clients. And I was surprised to find out that in the default package for KDE and Gnome, they don't include an email client. And a client is the one that is installed on your computer. Like in the old days, most of us remember Outlook Express. And we had that on our computer, went out and got our mail, and we kept it on the computer. XFCE still comes with Thunderbird, which I tell people is a very similar, if you knew Outlook Express, you know Thunderbird. LXQT is the variation. Troy Hoda, I don't know how to say that right. They've just taken a variation of the email program and built it to their likings. Mate goes back to what was the equivalent or the comparable Microsoft Office or Microsoft Mail or Outlook. I'm sorry, get my mixed up. Outlook, not Outlook Express, because the Evolution has the contacts, has the calendar, has the email, has whatever else. It's the one you'd use if you were in the office setting. And they just decided to go back to it. Maybe they had some disagreements with what Thunderbird kind of is not the most up to date, because once it's working fine, if it ain't broke, leave it alone. I think what's happened is that most desktops know that the majority of people are going to web-based mail, either with Gmail, Outlook Mail, Yahoo Mail, my Proton Mail, and a client on your computer isn't as important anymore. But you can see that some of them still have it. Since Thunderbird is pretty much a lookalike to what Outlook Express was for those people, not need to take a quick look at that either. Productivity, things that we do. Another surprising, some of the computers do not come with an Office suite already installed. Part of the reason, it adds more bulk to the installation program. And not everybody uses a huge Office suite. But if they're going to include one, it'll probably be LibreOffice. Now, KDE has a variation called Calligra, and it's very identical to what you'd find in Office, Microsoft Office with the components and LibreOffice, and it's just their remake of it. They don't include it because it would bog down the install. LXQT, the same thing. A lot of times what they do is they will include a lightweight, simple word processor, sort of like how Microsoft includes WordPad, which is an old version of a Microsoft Word that's not being used anymore. Since it's pretty much the same, there's no need to really go over any of these things because it's cross-platform. So if you've seen it on Windows and Mac, it's the same thing, and we don't need to see too many of those. But we move on to stuff that we do have. What is included is a text editor. Text editor is a glorified typewriter. In the old days, we called it Notepad, and brain can't think of it right now. So Microsoft includes it, and so do these, as a simple thing for writing up, small documents that don't need to be fancy, don't need to have all the bells and whistles that you would use in Word. Also, as another side, a lot of people in Windows 2 write code. And so some of these text editors are, as you see, will be designed to help people who are writing code, and you'll see that. But we got a lot of different fun names for these things. As I said before, the KDE uses the K, so that their version is Kate. GEdit was the GNOME editing program, and nowadays they can probably just name it something different, like you'll see. XFC uses one called Mousepad, and another one that's used is called Featherpad, just like Notepad. Pluma Cinnamon has now started going with a trademark software names. They're all in X's. So here's the first of theirs. Their editing program is called XEd. And you can see again that Budgie has the GEdit, and Pantheon didn't include one, but Pantheon's idea is that we have a very lightweight, simple program to start, and then you build it the way you want it. So here's what Kate looks like. And as you can see, it's a text editor, but this one has it nice. It's got a menu system on the side where it's like a tree of your operating system. And the thing with the numbers is can be turned on and off, but that's what like the coders do, because when you're working with somebody and you're evaluating something, it's nice to have a line number. Go check line 6. There's a problem in line 27. There's a problem in, look and see if we need to add something at line 232. So those are there, but if you are not really into that, you can turn them off and just have a very natural note-taking place. This is what the GEdit looks like. Notice it didn't have the navigating tree on the side, but it still has the numbers. But again, as I said, the numbers will can be turned off. Basically, it's just text. Sometimes some of them will have options to change font sizes, but basically it's considered, think of it as a typewriter. Type up something and save it and print it out. There's Mousepad. It also can do something different than typewriter. You can have a number of different tabs to be able to do editing back and forth or copying and pasting. This one has the number turned off, but you can turn it back on it if you needed to be. Featherpad, no difference. And again, the choice for white on black was the combination of the LXQT and the Manjaro. Nowadays, I'm preferring to have white letters on black background. It's easier on my eyes. And so I like what they call the dark themes. If you go on to Pluma, again, what you would have to do, and I tell people, these are all free. So download them, try them out, compare them, look into what they can do, and then choose what you want. What I noticed with the Pluma is that you have more of a toolbar at the top. You can see I have the print icon there and a number of different ones. So with the Pluma, you can do a little bit more than maybe a simple one like the GEdit one looked. XEd has some of the same things, a little bit more than just a plain text editor like some of the first ones were. Oh, we all need PDF programs. We need to view PDFs. And so although Linux comes with a PDF, but there are differences. And each one is a little bit different than the other so that you can find which one you like. I like a lot of the KDE programs. Ocular with the K is the one that pops up for them. Events is for GNOME. Atrial, and it took me a while to finally, oh, I know what it is, all these jumbled letters. It's Q, PDF view, and that's the Q from the LXQT. Mate also uses the Atrial. Cinnamon, probably it's the Atrial that has been modified, so it's now called X Reader. Budgie calls it Doc Viewer, but it's really the events, and so does Pantheon. So we'll just take a look at a few of those. And it's just the same as in the Windows world, back when I was in the Windows world with, you know, Adobe Reader, and then we had a few other PDF programs. And so, you know, you tried out which ones you liked, and then you used it. I also, when I'm showing the different programs, I'm trying to use the same thing so that you can get an idea of the differences. You're not seeing a difference in the file that we're reading. I like Ocular because it has a thumbnail view, and what's neat about it is you can tell that the top part is gray. That's all I'm seeing on the big screen. So I know that there's another half of the paper to read. And so I like that. So it really kind of helps me keep track of where I am. You can edit these and you know, make bookmarks. So this one's a very good PDF reader. This is the one a little bit simpler. It just has the page thumbnails down the side, of which, of course, you can turn off if you don't want to see them. You can make the paper you're looking at big, wide. This is just at 100%, but you can make it bigger so it is, you know, larger print. But this is a very basic one that this one has. Atrial, a little bit more. All they did was kind of move some of the tools around up to the top of the screen, but still has the vision that side. I have the Cube PDF viewer. It came with my XFCE, which was different, and it's not that much different. I still like the Ocular one, and I could add that if I wanted to, but this is, you know, working fine for me. The X Reader, you could say, wait a second, didn't we just see that? And that's why I had to put the X Reader on there, because if we backed up a couple slides, we'd say, oh, that's just almost like the one we just saw. You try them out, see which one you like. Image Viewer, we need to see our graphics. We like to look at our photos and other graphic images. And so everybody comes with those. Gwen View, Image View, which is now the new name, because remember I said GNOME is saying just default names. It used to be called Eye of GNOME or Eye of GNOME, but now they're just going to call it Image Viewer because it makes it easier for people to say, oh, that's the program I want. The XFC one, a little bit of a hard one, Ristretto. But if you like one of these other ones, you can just download it and use it instead. And the LX for the LXQT LX image, Mate took the Eye of GNOME, modified it because of Mate, and it's now the Eye of Mate, EOM. Cinnamon did the X Viewer, probably took the same Eye of GNOME and modified it. And Budgie just changed it to Image Viewer, but it's still the same one. Pantheon took it and kind of modified it to make it very simple, and they're just calling it Photo. So GwenView is good because it is also a photo organizer. You can use this to help organize your folders and files of your pictures. So I just wanted to throw that in, let you know that you get 2 for 1 with GwenView. There are other photo organizers out there that I would probably use if I was really wanting to do a better job. Had to use my little penguin cartoon here so that it's Linux. Penguin's a Linux guy, and let you be able to see the different organizations of how image viewers look. GwenView shows you some information on the side. I'm sorry that it's kind of small print. Sometimes it's difficult when you're trying to do screenshots. You got to go into the master settings and try to find where all the font changes are. But you can see that it will show you information about the picture, and you can see it full screen. Once you get into a screen, you have the back and forth, so you don't have to close it out and go to the next picture in that folder. And you have a little bit that if you needed to rotate because it came up wrong, and then resave it that way. The Eye of GNOME, they have their properties of your picture on the right-hand side. I guess because you say Judy and I always talk about being teachers of the very little kids. We always teach the process left to right. So we focus on the left at the picture, then we look at the right to see all the information. And depending on what information the computer or the picture includes, you could have seen that it would show more things about the actual picture itself from like the camera. When you look at the one that comes with XFCE, you'll notice that, oh, I don't see much with the information, but I do see that all of the pictures that would be in my folder would be on a film strip on the side, and I know what's up next. So it's a very basic viewer, and so if that's all you need, fine. If you need something more, you've got other choices. LX Imager, very similar to the one we just saw before with where we had the data on the side. The EXIF data isn't included with this background. This is a background for your desktop if you wanted it. But you can see up at the top that you can do some work with it. But again, this is not an image editor, it's a image viewer. I've discovered that they aren't including editors as much in your basic core because not everybody does photo editing. If you want it, we got definite things out there for it. And here's the eye of Mate. Took the eye of Gnome, moved the information to the left side. Not quite sure why they chose to do that, but that's their choice. So for you, if you like the picture on the left and information on the right, go with the other one. If you like the information on the left and the picture on the right, you go with this one. Love choices. And the X viewer, you can see that they've modified what we've just seen and made it just a little bit different with some more information on it. Again, there's no metadata on here because it wasn't a camera picture. And just to show you, this is the same eye of Gnome, and what Budgie did by just trying to make it a very nice looking, not complicated, and that's what some people want. They just need that sort of stuff. Oh, and then this is the other one. It's the same one with elementary. And you can see that even this one that has even less tools. So it's very, very, very simple one. A lot of us listen. Not unfortunately, but more and more people are streaming their music. They're going to an online streaming service and then listening to music that way. But if you have a collection like our APCUG president and treasurer that spans decades of media from records and tapes and all that, you probably create your own playlists and want to listen on your computer. So here are the kind of the most popular ones that are being used as the default desktops. Most of us all know the VLC program is probably the #1 cross-platform program that just does about everything, and usually is the most recommended whenever you go to reviews. Rhythmbox is been around for a long time for Linux, the default one in GNOME. The XFCE has created a recipe for one called Parole, and the LXQT is using one called MPV. And you might say, MPV? Well, it's actually Media Player and Video. And you can see that Rhythmbox is the prime default one that is included. But there are others, so if you happen to find one you like better, I like one called Clementine. Very similar to Rhythmbox, but when I compared the two, I just liked the look, feel, and the way it worked better. So let's take a look, and you can see that here's the VLC. A lot of people say, I've never seen this this look on here, because you have to go into your menus and turn on playlists. Most of the time, you just see that big black screen and it plays your songs. Here, this looks a lot like what you would see in iTunes, and you have access to your library, and you can create playlists and then play them. So if you like VLC and you've never seen this when you've been playing music, go into your tools and say, I want to see the playlist. And then you can have access to your folders and stuff like that. Here's Rhythm Box. This will be the one that's going to be pretty much the standard one for most Linux desktop environments. And as you can see on the side, it does have a lot with the iTunes. You can play the music that you're queuing up, but this one also can connect to internet and radio services. And so if you have some of those will connect to free, and you can listen to radio all around the world, and you can listen to music styles from all around the world. But that's what you're going to find in most Linux. Clementine, to me, had a few more extra features that I liked, so I run it. Here's the one called Parole. This is one that just gives you your playlist on the side and is very simple. It plays it. It also has a big screen that if you wanted to, you might be able to turn on some background graphics to have bars and graphs play while the music plays. And then you have your playlist on the right. The MPV one is even simpler than that. It just has black screen if you want to turn, and then across the bottom you have a menu bar that lets you see how far along in the song you have, back it up, and some others. A very good one, but it's a very simple one. And this is the one, music, and you can see, well, gee, it does look a lot like the Rhythm Box, but modified a little bit. This one, I don't see a link to the radio stuff. And there are a lot of people that, well, that's not important to me. I want just my music. And so this one would be a little bit based on that. Oh, and I said, what? We just looked at that. That's the same because two of them use MPV. Oh, I hit the back button. All right. Along with video playing, we do movies and stuff. So we need to watch clips of movies that we might get from here and there, whatever. Again, KDE, the VLC is a versatile one for both audio and video. So that's the default for it. Gnome took the program called Totem and has renamed it to Simple Videos because they're trying to go to real simple names. Parole is another one that is a double duty one that has audio and video. LXQT uses a variation of a player, and I like this one called SM Player, and it took an older version of a video player and made it a little bit better. Mate and Cinnamon both are using a modified newer program called Celluloid because it's video cells. Budgie uses MPV, and then Pantheon took their program and renamed it, videos as well. So when you see it, it'll say, oh, it looks just the same as what we've seen. Here's what the VLC looks like for videos. It has the picture, and then you have controls down at the bottom. You can see how far along you are, volume controls, whether you want to play it again. If you have a playlist of videos, you can loop them around. The Totem one is a very simple video one. You can see that pretty much I don't see too many tools around. There is one, if you move your mouse to the bottom, I couldn't get it to pop up and stay to take the screenshot, that it will pop up and it'll have, you know, the line that shows you where you're playing, and you can drag it back if you need to repeat. Parole, this one then does both the audio and the video. It has a playlist on the side and then some controls at the bottom. SM Player gives you a few extra tools at the bottom, has a more complete menu system, and notice that there is even links to TV and radio so that you might be able to link up to watch some TV or radio, depending on what services you have available. Celluloid looks very similar down at the bottom. I think that's what would have popped up at the bottom of Parole if I could have gotten it to stay, that you just have your normal start and pause, and then you can drag your video and start wherever you want. And MPV. So there's the version that they did. Again, just has normal controls at the bottom, no playlist. So what I'm trying to get at is that with all of these softwares, that oh, that's the video for Pantheon that just said we're going to take and create a very elegant looking simple one. Why are you going back? So, you know, in that first part, basically the whole goal was to show you that with Linux you have choices, and what's nice is that you aren't stuck. If I like, for the most part, the XFCE desktop, but I have a couple of programs that come from a different desktop that I like better, I can install them and I can have them running on my computer along with what I've gotten. If I have something that's on my computer that came with my default desktop I don't like, install a new one and I can remove the other one. It's not like they're, you know, have tendons connecting to each other that you can't get rid of some stuff. So you can really customize your Linux to be, here's the best software I like, and here's what we put it together. Now, speaking of software, I was going to do it at the beginning. The Linux team needs, you know, your help in two different areas. One, we need, what kind of workshops are you interested in seeing in the future? The chat box is great, that if you have an idea of what you would like to see in future workshops, tell us, because we don't know what is in your minds of what you need to know. The second, we have talked that there are a lot of programs that you might use in the Linux, in the Windows and the Mac world that you need, and you're curious about, is there a version of or a type of program like it in the Linux world? There are so many software in Linux that we can't really just prepare a huge general topic of software that, you know, you move from. So you would be really helpful that if there is specific software, I know that I've already got, and we're working on it right now. Somebody submitted that they needed some information about finance. You know, they're used to using Quicken. What can you do in the Linux world? We have another person that submitted, and we're working on it for the future presentation on databases. You know, what do you have, you know, in the database? So what we need is for people to tell us what would you be interested in knowing. So use the chat box, or you can send to Judy through your connections with your registration, and give us ideas for future topics and specific software that, you know, doesn't work. I know that some of the tax software that can be installed on, you know, Windows is not designed to be installed on Linux. But is there a tax program that would be Linux that would, you know, equal or do the same thing? So I can't answer those questions now until I kind of know, and then we research. We'll go find them for you because, like I said, there's thousands. Part 2, since we want to stick with the software, is talking about shopping for software. Where do you shop for Linux software? And my one answer is close to home. When we were little, a lot different than nowadays, afternoons, after dinner, we'd go out to play. And usually our parents would say, go out to play, but stay close to home. Stay in our neighborhood. As you got older, maybe you were allowed to go a little bit farther away. It was safe to stay close to home. And so that's what I recommend in where to shop. It's skipping over my... Okay, go back. I might be getting ahead of myself because it looks like I'm missing a slide. When you go and shop, a lot of times we will shop for groceries at our neighborhood market. In the old days, a lot of times that's what it is. We have neighborhood butcher shop and the bakery and stuff, and we would shop at our neighborhood shop because we knew the people there and we knew what we got. And then we started going to a bigger grocery store. Nowadays, we're even going to the point where people don't do their own shopping. They get somebody else to shop for them, which some people don't like because you like to pick up that banana or you like to pick up that and really see. You like to look at that piece of meat, really see what it looks like before you buy it. But times change. And so you can have somebody going and shopping for you and you just go pick it up. Nowadays, we do a lot of online shopping. I pick out something online and you mail it to me. I don't leave my house. You can do the same things, you know, like with the Linux. Now, staying closer to home, what does that mean in terms of with Linux? Linux has circles of safety. And in the Ubuntu family, now we're switching now, we're going to talk more about distros than desktops. Because like I said, Ubuntu has 6 of today's desktops, all variations, but they all would use the same beginnings like what we're talking about now. In Ubuntu, they have 3 different circles. Their main one is their sponsored area. These are all the programs that they have checked out and they know they work with the different Ubuntus and they're safe and whatever. So you could definitely stick with that one area and be safe and know that anything you got from there was fine. Their second area is called Universe, and that's for the FOSS. For new people, that's free and open source software. So that may be software that they haven't 100% checked to make sure it works well with the Ubuntu brand of Linux, but it's out there, it's free and open source. And then they have the one that you go outside further that's restricted. These are the closed source, proprietary. So if you stick with those, you're going to always have safe software. You can always go out on the internet and find other things out there. But you might take a risk of something that has been designed not safe, something that includes virus or malware or something. So there's enough software that you can just stick with the source, unless you're going directly to a known website for the creator of the software. There we go. Fedora, they have their one area is called Fedora, and that's their sponsored area. So everything in that one is what they have available for their wide range of software. Then they have what they consider a category called testing. These are probably the newest versions of software that need to be tested to see how well they work with Fedora. Because remember, they're Linux programs, but Fedora needs to make sure that they are tested with them. And so if you get something from the tested, not 100% guarantee that you might have a little bit of problem. Maybe you won't, but you never know. And then, of course, you can go even outside that to third party, and that means these are ones that aren't even in the testing list, and you kind of at your own risk. What you can do, though, with these third party is if somebody you trust says this program is good and it works, then you can trust them and go get it. But if you're on your own, maybe not so much. Debian has in their areas a main area, which includes all of the software that's been tested out for them, and it includes non-free, meaning not in price, but not free open source software. They also have a testing area. That's what they're testing to go into the next version of their distribution, and an unstable. There are some people who want the newest and greatest, and they're willing to take the risk. I say to myself, we're not going to take a risk. We're not going into unstable. We'll just stay with the main and maybe once in a while do a testing. Because it could be, for example, that the testing could have the newest version of Zoom in it. But if you wait till the main one gets that version of Zoom, you might run into some problems with Zooms. I did, because you always want to run the newest version of Zoom. So I would go into the testing and get the newest version of Zoom and not wait for it to come out in the main. OpenSUSE has two. They have the main one, which has all of the open source software that they've okayed for use on their machines, and then they have an area that's non-OSS. They're Linux programs, but they're closed, so you don't really get to see what's in them. I want to also mention the Arch Manjaro. Probably the Arch distribution has the hugest, if that's even a word, store of software in their core. Everybody talks about how much they have available. Well, Arch is also the most up-to-date. They use everything that's the newest and the greatest. And so, excuse me, that is just huge. They also then have a layer called Extra, and that is extra stuff that they just didn't include in the core. The biggest feature of Arch and Manjaro and those family is the community, or what they call the AUR, Arch User Repository. And this is where all of the software that's made by Arch users that they think they have a better one that's than the core. And so you can go out there and just get tons and tons of software from that. And that's one of their big features, that if you really want a wide variety and an endless variety, Arch has it. But Arch, you've got to be careful, because they always are using the newest versions of everything before they've been tested completely to know that it's not going to crash your computer. So if you use Arch, once in a while you have to repair yourself. All right, so it's like groceries. So how do you get to these places that you have software that you can get? Every program has a software or application program nickname, the store. And these are ones that you go to, and you know that these are those first circle of things. Before we got the fancy application stores, we used what's called package managers. and there's a software program that would go out and get it. It's a little bit more, I don't want to say complicated, but it's definitely not as simple as the store. But that's the way that most of us in the beginning did our actions, and I'll show you that. The other one is through the terminal and command line. We're not going to focus a lot on that because we're going to have a whole workshop that's going to be devoted to sharing and teaching about the Linux command line, which has so many features to get your work done better and faster, that things you want to learn. If you've been around computers a long time and can remember back before the Windows desktop days to DOS, that's what command line is. Only it's a lot different than it used to be way back then. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some examples of these that come with the different distros and see how you get the software. Of course, again, you can always go out on the internet, but you take your chances when you go out there if you don't know. OpenSUSE was what we were doing with KDE. Here's their software store. Categories on the side for what you might be interested in. And then when you click on a category, then you get a whole list of the programs that are available. If it's installed, it'll probably be grayed out that it says remove, because this program is your add or remove. Once you select one that you want, then you get to hear, information. You get to see maybe a screenshot, an explanation about the program, and then some reviews. And you take the reviews with the grain of salt, because you don't know who is writing the reviews. But for the most part, this helps you know, is this something that you would like? And almost every one of them does that. They'll give you reviews or ratings about the software. And then up at the top corner, you click, I want to install this. And so it's very simple, category, and then Fedora came a little bit a different approach, and they said, well, we're going to design our store with not advertisements, recommendations. And so at the top, there's their editor's pick. If there's a check mark, it's probably already on your computer. If it doesn't have a check, you can check it out. Recommendations for audio and video and for games. Down at the bottom, you can see that they have categories. So all you do is click on the category, and then you can find out what you want. When you click on the program, just like I showed you in the OpenSUSE, you get to see one or two screenshots, a written up explanation, and some details about it. And then I can't scroll down the bottom, but down at the bottom has some reviews about the program. So this is what's nice, is that you know what you're getting before you hit the button that says install. And you can also see that this program is already on the computer, and I can launch it, or I can hit remove. If it wasn't installed, it would say install. Here's the one from the Arch repository. There's along with the Manjaro and the LXQT. They have the same thing with the categories down the side for what you want. There's no kind of recommendations. They do have a featured, but it doesn't pop up with you in front of you like it did on that last one. And so again, you can click an area. It tells you whether it's installed or not, and you can then remove it. You can sort this, and I went and tried to find something that wasn't like in the core. I never did. I went scrolling down through most of these categories, and they're just all filled with their core stuff because it is so big. And then if you pick one, again, you get screenshots, explanations, information, and reviews. I will say that there's a thing about up here on the left-hand side under the details, it says dependencies, and some programs are dependent on you having other programs already on your computer. And usually it'll go through and look and see, do you have those dependencies? If not, we need to add those first and then we can install the program. Ubuntu, very similar, but theirs are all just the icons. Up at the top, you can see all of them. And so this is the whole list of what's available if you scroll through it. But they also, you can go by categories. Drop that menu at the top and categories. But again, once you pick one that you want to use, then they'll explain it to you, show you a screenshot or two. This one's got a few screenshots, and the details. A lot of times, the details will tell you what version it is. Normally, you don't have to worry about is it a 32-bit or a 64-bit, because you're running a 32-bit or a 64-bit operating system, so it kind of knows that. So it'll just show you the ones that work. Got to show you this. Mate came up with a real unique idea. They have this boutique, and across the top you can see icons for different categories. Obviously the one with the mortar hat is the education ones. This one is the one for graphics. There's one for settings. You can see each of these. So what they've done is they have gathered up, here are the most common recommended suggested programs for Mate users. And there's quite a lot there. If you click on one of them, it'll open up and give you some screenshots and explanation, and then you can install them. It would switch to remove if you have it installed. For the average person, that's all the farther you need to go is the boutique. It probably has everything. If it doesn't, then if you go to the other icon, you have to download the store, but you can. So if you needed to find something more, you can download the store and then be able to have access to the hundreds and hundreds of other ones that are out there. Here would be the normal Ubuntu type store. And again, you got editor's picks and then the categories for what you're looking for. This one doesn't tell you how many thousands of different software that's out there, or sometimes they're called packages. It's a lot to go through. And so some people really like the fact that boutique for Mate only, it's a Mate one. So whenever you use a Mate version on your desktop, you get access to that. Makes it a lot easier. But again, if you click on the one that you like to find out more, you get an explanation, the picture, and details and reviews. They almost all have that same components to it, so you really know what you're doing it for. And as you can see, this is the one that I was demonstrating earlier. It's the SM player. It is somebody's idea. They took that MPV, and I showed you some of those, and M player, excuse me, and put a better front end on it so that there's more access. So that's why I like the SM players, because it's an improved M player, which has been around, music player, and the movie player. But that will give you some explanations on it. Elementary is the one that does it with very nice. Notice that in addition to the recommended, which they call trending, they also have a category of letting you know what's been recently uploaded. What are the newest ones that they have added to their store? And then their categories, rather than just a plain old word, is a rectangle button that looks looks a lot nicer. Does it work any better than the other ones? No, they all work the same. It's just, how do you look? But again, this comes with the distro you pick. So you don't have as much choice. You can't install the elementary store on a Ubuntu, because the stores aren't the same. The programs aren't necessarily written the same. Goes back to my talking about cars, where if you're a Ford, you usually had to go to a Ford dealership to get parts for that car. As a driver of a General Motors, you don't usually go to a Ford store and get parts for your car because they don't really fit as well. You have to go to a general parts store that has them all. So this only goes with the actual distro, not the desktop, but show you about getting the software. So here, Elementary says, okay, you clicked on a category. Here's all the list. If you look on the right side, you're going to look and say, wait a second, as my grandson would say, they cost money. I thought you said Linux was free. Well, yes, Linux is free. Linux software, for the most part, is free. But there are people who want payment for theirs. So these might be what we called my earlier presentation, paid open source software, or it's paid closed. And so like the apps on our tablets and our phone, you're free to purchase if you want. And sometimes purchasing just helps people keep developing software. But as you can see that they do list the free ones. Elementary is also a distribution that kind of holds out the hat when you first download it, asking you for support for it. The trick is you put in $0 and then you can download the program. But a lot of times people, after you're using Linux, will be contributing to your distribution to keep support for it going. A lot of Linux people, when they get free software, will contribute to the developer just to kind of help. And as you can see, some of these programs, you know, was it $2? Wow, $10. Okay, your choice. Okay, if you pick a category, then again, they will tell you a little bit about that program. And always it'll tell you at the top whether it's free or cost, so you don't click on something wrong. So these are examples of the store. Very easy, point and click, picking what you want, and then hit enter. What I want to share with you now is what I've got, and this is the MX version of like the boutique. That was not it, that's the other one. Let me get back. Slides got out of order. This is like the boutique. And what MX did is they created a page probably with more software than is on the boutique. So it's kind of a halfway. And I have all these categories of the most popular software packages. And I can go into any of these. What's nice about this one is I can check a whole bunch and install them all, at the same time. And you can see in here that the ones that are grayed out are already installed on my computer. The ones that are in dark print are ones that are available. You can also notice that when you look at this list, it's not just my XFCE software. Some of the categories will have the KDE or the Gnome or the XFCE. So that lets you know that in Linux, I can cross things over and pick what you want. Karita is listed as a graphic. That is obviously a KDE program, but I can download it and install it on my XFC MX Linux one without a problem. So this is probably all the farther that I go. If I needed to get more software, I can go back to the second tab on mine, and this goes to my circle of software. These are all the stable, the core programs that are that, you know, the popular ones are included in here. What I want you to notice is if you look down at the bottom and see, I have available to me 59,000 packages with programs. My computer has almost 2,500 packages. Now, a lot of packages are small packages that are inner workings and whatever, but there's a huge number that you can get. So I don't have a fancy looking software store. I just have the two-part one. Here's all the most popular in a list. Pick what you want. If you want more, come to this category here. Next to last, before we had all these software stores, this is the way that most of us got Linux back, 10 years or so ago. This is a program called Synaptic. As you can see on the left, a lot of categories for the software packages. And then when you pick a category, then you get a list of all the available ones. If you find something that you want, you click it, you get a definite or an explanation about it, and then you can add it to your list to install. The reason for this being a little bit confusing to beginner users is that sometimes you click on something you think, oh, I need this particular one. Well, you need the dependencies or some secondary programs that unless you have your computer set to automatically do it, it won't download everything. It's like all the different parts. You go to the restaurant and you order a sandwich and you forget to specifically say, I don't want this or I do want this on my sandwich. You walk away from it and you're going, oh, it doesn't have everything I wanted. You didn't say so. So this is Synaptic. And a lot of people use it as their regular one because it's complete. It has everything that's available out there. But sometimes you might accidentally not get something, but you need to make sure that your computer says automatically get all the dependencies. And then because of the open source recipes, here is a program, Muon, which if you look at it says, oh, that just looks like a fancier looking Synaptic, which is what it is. Somebody just took it and made it more modern looking. But again, it's the same. If you look down there for this distro, there are 67,000 packages available. And on this particular computer, 1,800 have been installed. And right now, there's 256 ready for upgrading. So this computer needs to be upgraded. It's running that. It's a virtual one. So that basically shows you the different ways. Now, I'm just going to show you just so you see, and we won't get into this a lot and any because that's for a future one. But the original days when you had the command line and that's all we had was the DOS days, you would install programs using commands. And what I wanted to show you was that each different kind of distro base has a different code. So in the Debian Ubuntu world, that's everything's based on Debian, that's the apt program. So to install a program, you would do sudo apt install the program name, and it would go out and get it and download it. If you're on the Arch system, you have to learn a different command, which is pacman -s, capital S to be exact. The one for Fedora is the DF or DNF, so sudo. And if you're using that OpenSUSE that we talked about, it would be zipper. But you can see that it's not that big. You just have to know the name of the program, and you just go in the command line, and it's a lot faster and goes out and gets everything that you need. But we'll talk about command line and the terminal at a future meeting. Orv needs to be here for that, and Saran. I'll close with what makes Linux so great. Choices. You always have choices. Maybe sometimes too many, but that's the American way. We have choice, but you always have choices. And if there are too many, then all you need to do is get in touch with somebody that you trust with, Linux, and say, I need help. What do you recommend? Or we go to many of the websites and things like that give you good advice, and we have plenty of them out there. So I'm going to stop the sharing and then let Judy take over first with what? Those of you who are turned off your cameras, you're welcome to turn them back on. After Judy, we'll do open questions and discussions and whatever. So what you got, Judy? I do have to say that Judy's living in an area where the fires, she's been out of her house 2 different times. When I talked with her the other day, she was out for 27 hours plus 5 when I got the email. And then she got back home and she said she's out again. There's power at home, but no internet. So she is mobile. She's out at her daughter-in-law's. So.
At my youngest daughter's house, and it's hysterical because I have my cell phone in the other room, and I'm trying to concentrate on what's happening because I thought it was really interesting, and my phone keeps ringing with neighbors wanting to, want me to come up with somebody who can fix their wind damage. I'm going, I'm in a Zoom meeting, don't call me. But anyway, I have, let's see, some questions here, and I have, has anybody used Ubuntu Studio, and what advantages are there over using any other variation with the software packages? And how do you recommend installing it over your current version without losing any of your software or settings?
The first question, you could almost answer that one. Ubuntu Studio is a fantastic version if you are somebody who does a lot of video editing, audio editing, and creation. It's just what it is. It's the studio. And the beauty of it is that it comes pre-installed with all of the software that you need to use in your business. If I would recommend to my son, who has a company, he's a composer and arranger and does some video editing, that's the one I'd recommend to him because it already comes with all the software that he would need, and he'd be ready to go with all the editing and creation. So that's the reason it's better. But I can take a regular Ubuntu and add all that software myself, and I can create my own studio. But it's nice that it's already done and gather it all up.
One of the comments that he made was that you can put a 2.5-hour movie together easily with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another person wants to know how to create their own personal distro.
Very easy. You can start out with the basic Linux, and then you add, it's just like, okay, it'd be making like since, Judy knows that we all talk about examples. It's like making a 7-layer salad, and you start out with your Linux, which is the base, and then you pick the desktop that you like, and then you add the software that you like, and then you can export that into a burnable CD or thumb drive that can be used to install on others. If you are very, very techy, you can get in and go into the command line and rewrite Linux to your likings. But I would think for me, it would be the kind of thing, like I said, I would start out on whatever distribution you liked or Linux you liked. But you can start with basic Linux. All of the distros start with a basic Linux. And then Arch does a little bit something, and then Ubuntu does, and Debian does, and Fedora does, and then build on that. So, yeah, you can make your own. And that's the problem. We have our distro watch page that we've talked about before always lists the top 100. And there are more than that versions of distros. And that's because everybody's taking a version of Linux and modifying it and now has their own version of Linux. And you'd be surprised at all the different variations. There's a scientific Linux, there's a satanic Linux, there's the Christian Linux, there's the hacking Linux, there's this Linux. And you know, John was the one that really helped us to talk about that website that you can go and check out without having to install anything, called Distro Test. And there you can go and test out a whole bunch of them. But it's crazy, because you just make one slight variation and you can call it a new Linux distro. But basically there's a dozen or more of the, you know, most popular, most used ones out there.
Can you run iTunes on a Linux computer?
You can run something similar to that, but that would be one of those proprietary software like Adobe that Adobe does not want to take the time to write a Linux version, and Apple says, we're Apple, we do it our way or no way. So if you are needing the iTunes, it depends on what you need. You know, we have programs that run music and can access, like I showed you on the audio ones. We have versions of Linux that can become a DVD player, and that we've got versions of Linux that can be a TV and control TV. So it you know, on the iTunes, you'd have to ask, what do you specifically need? Because iTunes belongs to Apple, and Apple wants to keep their stuff to them.
Hey, John.
Yes,
I
John.
have a question.
Go ahead, John.
I dropped a couple of those links into the chat for distro test and distro watch so that people can get those.
Okay, Judy will add those to the email that goes out. Good, thanks.
Oh, my hand went away. Anyway, can you use Ocular with a Windows computer?
I believe you can. A lot of the software that Linux uses is cross-platformed, and off the top of my head, I think it is, but I don't want to say 100% yes, because that would be on our next software when we're talking about, you know, all of the Windows. But it might be one that does.
Okay, I'll check it out. And was that Betty's fudge recipe from her family from way back when?
I think it was, yes.
My daughters just got through making fudge for the first time this Christmas from my uncle's fudge recipe that's probably well over 50 years old. And Stacy was here and I said, is that one you used? And she goes, yeah. Okay, over to you guys. I need some hands raised, please. Don't forget it's under reactions. We need, you know, we love questions.
I'll tell you if I love questions later.
Okay, Murray, you're on. Murray's
Murray.
in Canada from the Victoria group. Unmute yourself, kiddo. If nothing else, you can press and hold your space bar down while you're talking. Okay, does anybody else have a question? And we'll wait for Murray. He sometimes has problems with his tech stuff.
Hey, John.
Yes, John.
Do I have permission to share screen?
I will give you permission as being my co-host.
Okay. And then if people have questions, they can jump in afterwards. One of the things I wanted to share with folks is there are even distros out there that look like Windows 10. To the majority of the people on this call, this might look like Windows 10 to you. It actually is not. It's a Linux distro called Linux FX, and it has been skinned to look like Windows 10. So why is that important? For a couple of reasons. If you're transitioning from Linux to, from Windows or Mac to Linux, and you want to make the transition a little bit easier, having a distro that sort of looks like what you've been using might actually, you know, help you in the transition. And just in case you're wondering if I'm trying to, if I'm trying to fool you, this is the actual system info from my computer that I'm using right now. It's running a little bit older version of Ubuntu. It's 20.04, and it's using the Cinnamon desktop. It's using the Linux kernel 5.04.60, and then it just gives you my processor information and so forth. So this is actually a Linux distro, and it looks like Windows 10. Even the icons, if you'll notice down here in the lower left where the start button is for Windows 10, it looks like Windows 10 icons. And if you click on it, you'll notice that it's running something similar to what you have in Windows 10. It's using the Cinnamon desktop, and it is this distro is loaded with all kinds of software. I actually was able to get Zoom loaded on here. I've got TeamViewer. I've got, actually there's a Microsoft Teams. It's a preview right now. And you've got different web browsers, and along with AnyDesk, which is a remote desktop software. So it comes with LibreOffice, which you mentioned before. There's programming, there's a programming language on there, sound and video. And then there's a couple of folders here where you've got administrative tasks, and then preferences in here to kind of customize the whole distro. So if you're familiar with Windows, this is no different. You've got, like I said, you've got the start menu there. This looks like a Cortana icon here, but when you click it, let's see if it'll come up for me. Come on. It's just a search. It's a search box for files. So you can go in there and type in whatever file you want, and it should pull it up in this area right here. The other thing that's nice about Linux is you can have different workspaces. This is the current workspace I'm using right now, and you can see I've got a bunch of windows open, but you can create multiple workspaces, which is nice. So you could have different programs opened in different workspaces. It has a software store, just like John mentioned before. And again, you can just go in and click on the one you want to install, and it has categories down at the bottom, just like John was showing in some of his slides. If you click on the file folder, it comes up with, come on, don't fail me. Oh. And as you can see, you have desktop documents, downloads, music, pictures, public. Not sure what Snap is. We got templates and videos. Very similar to what you're seeing in Windows. So if you're, if you're thinking about transitioning over, this is a great distro. And just if you're wondering what the name of it is called, it's called Linux FX. And right now I'm running version 10.1, which is, again, it's Ubuntu 20.04 underneath, but skinned to look like Windows. And the current version is actually Windows FX 10.7, which I think falls in line with the latest Ubuntu, which is 20.10. Right. You can download the latest version right here if you want. You can go to DistroWatch, and it's in DistroWatch, they call it Linux FX. So again, you can see some information about it, and then there should be, I think it's going to take you to their website to do the download. They don't give you a download option here. And then I wanted to mention, these are the two that we talked about before. This is basically a Linux website that lets you try different Linux distros without having to install them. So I just wanted to mention that to everybody as well. So, and then one last thing I wanted to mention, if you're looking for alternative software that, let's say you want to move to Linux, but you want to find something that is similar to a commercial or a paid version of software, you can go to this website, type in, find an alternative to Photoshop, and then hit find, and it will go out and search and find that alternative to the paid or commercial version. So, okay, I'm gonna release the sharing and let you get back to any other questions.
Following up on
that. That was outstanding, because so many people have told me, hey, I'd like to go to Linux, but it's such a big leap for me, and that's an interim leap for them.
Well, I think I did that one for you, Judy, because you were a little bit apprehensive there about. So now with the Windows 10 version of Linux, you can take the leap.
Right.
And thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I have a question for John. Is that a Zoom background?
No, that's your favorite one, because
or is that actually a thing you have on the wall behind you?
Oh, that John.
You talking to me, Judy?
Yes.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, it's just a Zoom background. Yeah.
Okay, I'm surprised you got that so cool with an i5. That's great.
Yeah. Well, I have a green screen.
Okay, got it. John, you need to unmute everybody.
I did. I apologize to Murray because I'm doing two things at once. Usually I'm running this Zoom, but today I'm running it and the presenter, and so I forgot to do that. So you should be able to unmute yourself now, Murray.
Yeah, I am unmuted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
I was frustrated there for a while because I was trying to unmute myself, and I sent messages to Judy and everybody, but thank you for unmuting me.
Yeah, I finally got that. Sorry about that. Hopefully next time I'll be able to focus one side or the other. Share with us.
I do want to thank you. This has been a fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Really great. But the question that you didn't quite get to was I'm running Linux Studio, Ubuntu Studio from a live DVD. I think I would like to install it because it looks really quite nice, but I want to install it over over the old one without losing the programs and settings and data that I've already got there. Now, I do have some advantages. I have like my USR and my /home on separate partitions. They're not on the same partition, but I want to know if there's any good tricks for how to do that, install over that old one without losing too much.
Since you have the home on a separate partition, that means you're not going to lose any of your settings or any of your files. Now, in terms of programs, they're installed on your root side. And so by installing it, whatever programs you had won't be there. But there is a way to do it, is that you can go into the Synaptic and create like a database of all the programs you have, and then, for another time, because that's going to confuse people, you save that file, and then afterwards you can run that file and it will put back some of that software. The only reason I would tend to not recommend that is that the new Ubuntu Studio that you have, software has been checked out for that, and there might be something on your old system that might not work perfectly, and then you'd have some kind of a problem. I kind of recommend that it doesn't take that long to install programs if you have your software saved, that you just install it over the old one and then quickly go in and install the programs that you're missing.
Okay, well, the idea of doing, I'll have to look into that from Synaptic, how to do that, create that database, because even if I don't install all of them, at least I will have a list of what's there. So in case I don't remember.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some of the things are like under wine and, you know, that kind of stuff. Like Ruth's Magic, I have installed under wine. And there's lots of other things too that are like that. Okay, that is very helpful. And as far as the creating a distro, I mean, basically once I get everything installed properly, I would like to have a distro that has all of those, just for myself, just that has all of my programs already installed, so that if anything gets clobbered, I can just reinstall that distro again.
Right, and that's just basically once you have it done the way you want to, burn the image.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, that's that pretty easy on there.
Okay, well, I want to just say how fantastic this presentation has been. I knew a lot of it, but boy, I learned a lot more. And some of the new distros are really interesting. Thanks again so much.
Sure, and as John's pointing out, you know, for those Windows people, that XF, as long as it stays out on the market, is a good transition. And the same thing for a Mac user. We have a few Linux versions that mimic Macs, so that a Mac person would feel very comfortable moving over. I don't think it's as bad as it is. If we go back to what I had said, you know, one of ours, these aren't my Linux workshops. I just push the buttons. We talked about the software that if you run them on Windows, the transfer to Linux is like a no-brainer, because it's all software that you've been using. It's just like sitting in a new car with the same, you know, steering wheel, gas pedal, but little subtle differences. But the software is what matters. So if you're using cross-platforms software in Windows, you just move right over to Linux and use the same software, and you're good to go.
Of course, 90% of mine is like that. There is only one piece of software, and it's sort of a love-hate relationship. But Pinnacle Studio is, well, I like the older version. It was really good when Pinnacle was its own company. They sold it to Avid, it became worse. They sold it to Corel, and it became horrid. But nevertheless, especially up to version 15, I have not yet found a video editor that is easy to use and easy to navigate. And but you know, it used to be that you could actually get in contact with the developers when it was Pinnacle. Now you can't even get anything. But anyway,
yeah,
that's my complaint.
You want to try the KDE Live video program.
Sorry, what is it?
KDE.
Oh, I have used that, and it is not as good. In fact, I've taught courses using that, but it is not as good as Studio, unfortunately.
I have a question.
Yes, Judy, I was going to say, Judy has her hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to put mine down, and thank you very much for.
I already put it down for you. We have a question asking, how do you transfer your current files from Office to the Linux?
Back them up on a thumb drive, and then copy them back over into your documents folder. Yep. And you know, now of course I recommend, as we're talking with Murray, that in Windows too, that I always recommend separating on your computer your operating system from your personal files, so that if you have to reinstall your operating system, it doesn't touch that. But yeah, that's all I used to do, was just to copy them over and paste them back in.
Or with LibreOffice, you can just open them up in that, and when you save them, they're what, ODS files?
Or yeah, any of the open document format stuff. Yeah.
Well, John, Jon. See, I am learning.
Good.
Judy, you have a choice whenever you can save it out as, you know, ODT or ODS or whatever, or you can save it out with a Microsoft extension as well.
John sends me all his stuff in ODS stuff now, instead of back in the day he would make it Linux or whatever, and I just open it up in Linux. It's my choice. I have that on the writer stuff on my hard drive, and I just keep it in ODS, or I change it to Excel. It makes no difference to me.
I was just going to mention that You mentioned putting your data on different drive. Whenever I have a Windows machine, I always create a separate partition. Well, I usually call it D. You know, C is the main one.
D for data.
Yeah, and all of my data, everything that is related to data is on that one, because if you have a failure, it is so difficult to restore your C drive, and having all of your data on a separate drive, which then of course is backed up, is makes all the world of difference. It saves you many hours of work.
Absolutely. And like with the Linux world, if you have it, it makes it easy. If you have a separate home, a lot of times you can have dual booting different Linuxes and then still be able to access your files, as long as you don't go crazy with two different kinds of distros. Then they don't happen to work. But you know, anything like in the Debian world, I can have any version of a Debian operating system, dual booting, triple booting, all accessing my one data partition.
And I actually have a separate partition completely, which is called /HOME on a separate drive completely. And I link all my home directories files to that one, so that in actual fact, in the /home directory, there is really nothing but links to the to this /home. And that has saved my bacon more than once, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Well, in the Linux world, if you make that partition just /home, it's separate, and you don't have to make the data one to do an extra one that way. Edward
is because of the SSD, keeps down the writes.
Yeah.
Our Huntsville friend has a question. Edward, you're on.
I remember when I used to run dual boot to Linux and Windows, I created a small partition that I shared between them. That way, keep everything straight and separate.
Right. Yeah, you can. You know, you just have to create an NTSF one that Windows can read, because Windows can't read or couldn't read Linux. So you had to create a Windows file that Linux can read. Yeah. In the early days when I dual booted, I did that same thing too.
I've been running Linux for a few years now, but anybody been around for a while? I started out with Slackware.
Ooh, good for you.
With a 66 megahertz computer.
Yeah.
And when that thing booted, it had to discover every device on there at every time it booted up. So it took a while to boot.
Yeah, Slackware was the original one. It was created, and luckily a month or so later, the Debian came out, and then the world was better.
But then I switched over to Red Hat. I ran Red Hat for a few years. Till Fedora, but I kind of got turned off by Fedora because Fedora had a lot of problems in its first few versions.
Yeah.
Like I think it was Fedora 2. When I installed it messed up, and I think it's supposed to install on the cylinder boundaries. It didn't do that. And so it didn't Windows wouldn't boot anymore. So I found out by trial and error, I had to go into fdisk. I'm sure a lot of people some people use fdisk, remember? A command line. And I had to delete all first I had to list the partitions and write everything down, delete all the partitions, and recreate each one manually. Then everything was working again. So it was a mess for a while. And one time on the Fedora version, it updated the kernel and everything. It wouldn't go to Windows. It wouldn't go to X anymore, and they provide the wrong C version on there or something, and it was getting error trying to create the new X on there. So I had a few trials and errors there with Fedora for a few years. Why I complained about it. They said, "Oh, we're not going to do anything until the next version comes out 6 months." So
yeah, they're always working on that.
I see. Yeah, I think things have gotten a lot better nowadays.
Probably so, because that's their business. Say that we really need input into either Judy or me, or right now the chat box, for topics for future Linux. I know that there's talk that we're going to have future workshops on some software like cross-platform that's not definitely, you know, Linux, but we need to have, you know, what is it in the Linux, you know, doing an install fest again. Especially if we need software, we need to know what software. You know, John gave you a website that has some of that information, but, you know, I need to talk with Orv and Sharon and say, okay, what are we going to do next? What do we think people want to know? It'd be helpful to really know what people want to know. So if you can set that in, it'll be just like next month when we have our Mac workshop. We're going to start out maybe with the first one, and then we'll need to find out, what do Mac users want to know? We've already done it with the Windows, and you know, what do you need to know? Bill can do that. So we need help in being able to tell us, you know, what do you want to talk about when we get together again?
Hey, John.
Yeah.
You may have covered this already in a previous workshop, but I apologize if I'm repeating myself on this. But have you covered on like where to get the Linux distro, how to download it, how to burn this, how to burn the CD or the DVD, or copy it over to a thumb drive so that people can try these different distros that are out there?
We did a very generic one about that, and then you were the one that came and told us about the easier way with the distro tests.
Yeah.
But yeah, we didn't want to go into a real deep, but we did talk about you can download it. But we figured that a lot of people didn't know about making virtual machines and that. But that's good for a future topic too. For if there are people who said, I want to actually run it for a while, not just do the testing on there.
Right.
I want to thank.
That's one of the questions we have, is like we did with Bitwarden when Kenneth downloaded it, installed it, and added passwords and all that good kind of stuff. We have that same kind of question here. Could, you know, one of the ones be where you actually download Linux and set it up, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, we can go through another virtual one again, because you can't do it while you're doing Zoom.
Right.
I want to thank. Okay.
Oh, and can I talk about our workshops?
I want you to.
Like
that was coming up.
And we have another question.
Yeah, I did.
Ruarik has a question. Ira's got a question. Go ahead, Ira. You're unmuted already.
Okay. I was going to ask John sometime, he ought to talk about the updates on Linux. It's not like Windows, where you just get one volume of it and that's it. You have no control. It does its thing. But Linux has got one of the best updates that I've ever seen, and I like it because it updates every 2 or 3 days, and that's why it's so safe.
Okay, put that in the chat box, and that way we have a visual reminder on that.
I wrote that on my tablet here.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Ira. All the way from across town.
Ruarik, if that's, you're on. Nope.
Okay, Judy, talk to us about upcoming workshops.
Okay. Number one, the Virtual Technology Conference on the 13th. It's how to do stuff. And we're going to how to buy a printer in 2021, iOS 14 tips on using some of the apps, how to create a free blog now that we have all this free time at home when we can't go out, at least we can't in California, how to use the Windows 10 tips app. Bob G is going to do a number on CCleaner, since so many people only use it to do one thing, and it would like to be your be-all end-all program, and does a ton and a half of stuff. And John Kennedy and his son are going to show us how to play games online. They do that as a family, at least every Saturday?
Or Sunday, yep. Board games.
Saturday or Sunday. And then in May, this is the first time for me, I'm usually scrambling at the last minute. We have iPad controls, Windows tips. Ray Baxter has put a new music presentation together. If you have had his first one is absolutely fantastic. And this is music in our cars. Don Aerosmith from the Philadelphia group is going to do one on VPNs and how to create your very own VPN. I'm looking for a Linux music, and I'm going to ask Sharon to do this, like Audacity, that's cross-platform. And then the video editing program guys have been wondering about, again, one that's cross-platform. So that's 1, 2. I only have one opening in May, which is shocking for me.
Great.
We are going to have, like John said, the end of the month, we're having a drones presentation from president of a group down in Florida who is into that and has given it to several groups down there. And then the VTC, and then Bill's Wi-Fi modems and routers. He had to update his equipment and found that there's all kinds of new stuff out there, and he thought he already had everything that was up to date. And then I'm going to find somebody that will talk to us about Macs. And since March 31st is World Backup Day, we're going to celebrate it by having a backup workshop with an overview. And I'm going to try to find 3, if not 4 people who will give us hands-on demos of quickly on the backup program that they use. And Bob G is going to give the one that he uses. After that, it's going to be genealogy, or Beach is going to do GIMP. And I'm hoping that our regular genealogy lady will show us one, and maybe get a third person to show a different, so we can have at least 3 genealogy quick presentations to, contrast and compare.
That's Gramps, not GIMP.
Oh, that's right. Sorry about that. I know what GIMP is too. Okay, John Mazur.
Yep.
And that's Gramps. And Irv is a buddy of mine. He has been for 1,000 years. He's the next valley west of where I am. And I'm 35 miles northwest of Los Angeles, where it blows all the time.
Okay.
Anything else you guys can think of for general workshops, shoot me some suggestions.
Or offer to do it.
Oh, no, that's my next spiel. If you would like to give a presentation at one of the VTCs, all you need to do is something that you've already done at your group, 45 minutes, time for Q&A. And I get turned down more than I get a yes, which drives me crazy, because you're not presenting to anybody in a webinar. It's like, John did, you don't see anybody, but you don't have the live Q&A. The Q&A is strictly by the chat box. And it's strange the first time, but after that, it's no big deal to just, be talking to yourself, so to speak, and looking at your monitor. In my case, when I'm home, I'm looking out my slider and into the backyard, and I'm on the rim of a canyon, and I'm looking at the people on the other side. So VTC presentations, things like that. John started this out as a panel. You do not have to do it by yourself. We can try to get a panel together. Over to you, Boyd. Maybe he's volunteering, John.
Oh, then we can go to Rorik.
Yeah.
Unmute yourself.
Get unmuted. Boyd, you're good to go, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There we got you.
Absolutely, perfect.
Okay. The program NWipe for destroying information on hard drives, is that a good one?
I don't know if I recognize that one.
I'm strictly a Linux user, and I'm
good.
Just use Shred in Linux. That'll destroy all the data.
Shred.
Okay, I'll write it down.
That's probably already installed.
Okay.
Or use DD on it.
Yeah, it looks like from NWipe that NWipe one of their programs is using the DD
Okay.
format.
And for others, that nickname is data destruct, but you also use it to make thumb drives too. Good, thanks.
Only one I had.
Good. Rorik, is that you? You got your mic turned on? There you go.
Hi. Yeah, I saw Boyd that had his hand up, and I was trying to raise his hand up. I didn't know if you could see him at the time.
Too many people. That's why we say put the button to raise your hand so we can see it.
Yep. I actually got just you guys were talking about the password manager. This is mine. If you put everything on this, and you wrap it up with aluminum foil, or if you take one page and put it on a spreadsheet, wrap it up in aluminum foil, put it in the bottom of your refrigerator, you should be safe in case of something like that. And you don't need to rely on anybody else.
So do you destroy the Excel file?
If you just make a sheet of all your passwords, you wrap it up in aluminum foil, put it in the bag, put it at the bottom of your refrigerator in the freezer, nobody will ever see it.
I know, but you said put them on an Excel file. So do you destroy or shred that Excel files?
Yeah, you can do that. I just keep one copy in the refrigerator. I mean, I don't, like my wife, she would know where to get it. My son, I have that book. So actually, if somebody came, I'd be worried about a fire. But that was just a suggestion. My other question is, like, I'm on Linux Mint right now, not the longest, not the latest version of the LTS. But when you guys were talking about the differences switching over, and John Mazur was talking about the Windows, and I haven't test drived, like in your, about the car thing. I haven't test drive a lot of different versions lately. And I know that one of the things that a lot of people had issues with right out of the box, whether it be Ubuntu with Canonical or OpenSUSE or anything, if they tried to go on and just do anything, like watch a YouTube video, none of the packages required to do that were in there. And that's why Linux Mint kind of went right to the top. Like immediately, like if you got a Ubuntu and you wanted to watch a YouTube video, you had to download the packages to do that. And
yeah, part of it has to do with a legal thing too.
So how did they get around that?
You're getting around it by downloading it, whether or not you following government rules. Because sometimes when you have to download the extra software, it says you're aware that in some countries this is illegal to do. But
so is Linux Mint illegal to use then?
No, but you've probably downloaded those codexes that might not be legal to do.
What I'm saying is Linux Mint comes right out of the box able to do that.
Right, because they install those. But all you do, on Ubuntu is just check the box to say add that. It was out of the box on my MX. I watch YouTube videos all the time. But there is copyright rules and stuff, so we have to remember that Linux is a worldwide, and some people don't have those rules. So Mint just says we're going to go ahead and put it on, and you just you accept the consequences if you're doing something that's not right in your area.
Right, I wasn't sure about that. I just knew that when I tried Linux Mint, like I was able to just do everything right out of the box. So
right. Yeah.
And I don't even know exactly what they're added to it to do that. Like what packages, like you said, codecs.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem with Ubuntu ever watching YouTube. Ever. I've never had a problem with it.
Yeah.
I think Hardy Heron was the last time I used it.
I've used it for literally almost ever since it first came out, and I don't remember ever having a problem watching YouTube.
Yeah. Just might be
Kurt from Twin Cities has a question.
Hi, Kurt.
Thank you.
Actually, I don't have a question. I have an off-topic comment, if I may. Many of us are Zoom hosts, and I hear a lot of the hosts here telling people to unmute themselves and whatnot. There's a relatively new feature in Zoom. that you can set for your meetings. I'll read it. It's request permission to unmute participants. I suggest that you all turn it on for your meetings. It's in meeting options, okay? When people sign into your meetings, first time, as I understand it, they will see a dialog that says, will you allow the host to unmute you? Okay. If they say yes, then hosts can unmute participants. So you can, if somebody is not an accomplished Zoom user, you can unmute their session for them. And a great use for it is when you go into a presentation, you mute everybody, okay? You can spotlight your speaker and unmute them. And then at the end of the presentation, when you want to take comments, you simply click a button that says request unmute, and everybody that has given you permission to unmute them is unmuted. I highly recommend it. Off soapbox.
Al has his hand up.
Hey.
Yep.
Yeah, on the password situations, we have an acquaintance here in town that puts his passwords in a spreadsheet on a thumb drive, and he takes his thumb drive to, we have a health club here in town. He has a locker off-site. That's part of his backup, too. He takes it to the community center and puts it in his gym locker. I think there's a magnet on it. He sticks it in a hidden place in the locker, and only he.
Whoever's speaking, we can't understand them.
And only he and the wife know where this flash drive is.
Yeah, that's an interesting, as long as that building doesn't fall down. Any other questions on the software or the software store? We'll leave the chat box open. We're now at 3:43. That's an extra long time. That's been great. I'm really excited about the numbers that had signed up, and we'll try to do this again if we can figure out what topics we need to do. I'd like to thank John, who was filling in for Bill James of co-hosting and helping us out. And of course, I'd like to thank Judy and give her the last comments.
No, I just wanted to say, when John was showing that version of Linux that he had, my Windows taskbar is open, and he sat his right on top of mine. And by golly, we both had this. I've got more open than he does on my taskbar, but we both had identical things. I mean, talk about what a hoot. Yeah. And I noticed that the sun is going over Stacy's house now, and it's time for me to go, because even though it's what, 1 o'clock, about, the sun is going.
So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks so much for attending, John. Fantastic as usual. Really appreciate the time and effort you put into this. And John M., you got to be here again and put your 2 cents worth in anytime. We appreciate that, but don't forget you need a Windows background too.
Nope.
Oh, darn. Anyway, see you guys at one of our other presentations or our workshops. And remember, if you're interested in giving a presentation, get in touch.
Just sharing what you love.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, and see everybody later.